welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandra and Happy New Year. It has been a little over a month since my last video, which was The Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, which I recorded with my husband because we did a Red Rising Saga read-along. So if you have not picked up the Red Rising books, definitely go get them right now, read them, and then come back and watch the videos because we discussed anything and everything about these books. We just adored them so much. They were so good. Favorite read of 2024. It has been a while since it's just been you and I sitting here talking about books, so I thought it would be fun to start off the new year with recapping some of my favorite reads of 2024, which I'm super excited to share with you, and then give you a little taste of what I have planned for 2025. So I have to begin this with my absolute favorite book of 2024, or really just the series, because somehow each book is a 5-star read on its own for very different reasons. So the Red Rising Saga. This is the 10th anniversary edition, UK paperback edition of Red Rising, and you'll see that the wing has turned from red to gold, which is very fitting for the story of these books. But Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown, hands down my favorite read of 2024. You can find videos for the first 6 books on my channel, so if you have not picked them up, please go get them and read them, and then hit me up on Bookstagram and we can gush about them together because these are amazing books. The first one is kind of a dark YA academy sort of setting, very fantasy elements, and then they become more sci-fi, very political and expansive and galaxy sprawling. It's just such a cool series. It has a lot of philosophical questions too, and I really like to just sit and stew about those kinds of things in books, so love it. It became a favorite, like all-time favorite series for me, so definitely pick these up. Now I'm going to pivot a little bit and go to some romance genre with Miss Emily Henry. Her release last year was Funny Story, and I have to say that this is probably my favorite Emily Henry. I love Book Lovers, I love Beach Read, but Funny Story probably takes the cake for me. Her character work is just really good in this book. She has emotional depth. The relationship that's depicted in this is very healthy, and there's a lot of like throwback kind of nostalgia, laugh out loud moments, which are just really feel good. It still manages to have that emotional depth to it. Love this. I am so excited for Great Big Beautiful Life to come out because I have high hopes for it just because she keeps getting better and better, and she has become like a favorite author to me. So I definitely recommend Funny Story if you are new to Emily Henry. Jump in with this one. This is also another fun one, which is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I think this was her foray into paranormal romance / fantasy, and this one was just absurd enough to have like all those really funny feel-good moments for me too. So there was this concept of the knot, which is with like canine types of animals, which somehow she made very sexy in this series. Like Emily Henry, the relationship depicted here is pretty healthy, not toxic at all, but it's super funny. It's a love story between a werewolf and a vampire, and it's just really good. Like if you are just looking for something fun, this one might be a good one for you. This one was an unexpected favorite read and probably an all-time favorite book as well. And it's because last May, I think, The Idea of You was coming out as a movie with Anne Hathaway and Nicholas Galitzine on Amazon, and I wanted to read the book first. I am so glad I read the book first because they are two very different stories. This one is not a happily ever after whatsoever. So if you're picking up The Idea of You by Robinne Lee and thinking that this is a romance, this is not a romance. There's definitely a romantic subplot in it, but it's more of a drama and a literary fiction. There's not a happily ever after in this, but there are a lot of sexy, feel-good, romantic moments in this book. And I thought that it talked about the difference between men and women and aging and age gap relationships and society's view on this and reversals. I thought it was just really well done. So this was a favorite read. And this one also is the UK paperback edition. I really like this one. This next book I have is by one of my favorite authors, Mark Lawrence, and it is the first book in the Library trilogy, which is called The Book That Wouldn't Burn. This was such a beautiful story, very intricate plot. So if you're into books that have kind of parallel timelines, lots of flashbacks, multiple POVs, in this case it's Lyvira, who is a little girl, and Ivar, who is a boy, and they are trapped in this infinite library, and the story kind of sprawls across time. If you're a Mark Lawrence reader, there are a lot of callbacks to other series in this, whether it's like Red Queen or Broken Empire or The Impossible Times. He has callbacks to all of his books in there, and it's so cool to read. The second book is out, so I hope to read that one soon in the next couple of months, because he's wrapping up the trilogy come late spring, I think, with the book that held her heart. So love this book. I did a video here on the channel, so if you're curious to hear more about those complex little intricacies in the story and what I thought about that, definitely give that video a watch. And then this one was a historical gothic kind of romance book, and I call it a romance because it does have a sort of happily ever after, which is a requirement for romance books, right? So this one does have a kind of happily ever after, or at least for this couple, but it's also kind of sad, like it's a little bit somber. But Leigh Bardugo's writing is luxurious. She has very dark plot threads. There are character deaths. There are things that will shock you. It's set in Spanish Inquisition Spain. There's some really interesting magical elements and this concept of familiars and stuff that stay with families. So it's really good, and if you want to hear my thoughts on that, definitely check out that video too. This next book was kind of a hidden gem that I came upon earlier last year. I went on Books or eBay and ordered a used copy of Lord of the Fading Lands, which is the first book in Tairen Soul by C.L. Wilson, and I received this really amazing advanced reader copy that is super old. I mean, it says on sale October 2nd, 2007. So I did a dedicated video for this book as well. This one and book 2, which is Lady of Light and Shadow. These were amazing reads. They were originally one book, which I wish they would have kept it as one book, because the second half really pulls the plot together and there's some really dark things that happen. But if you are looking for kind of an origin inspiration story for things like Throne of Glass, ACOTAR, even some of Holly Black's work and Jennifer Armentrout, this book, the magic system, the creatures, the world building, this is very much something that inspired series like those. So it's really cool to be able to look back at something that has like a lavender-eyed, all-powerful fae that destroy the world and is very morally gray. So it kind of has that sort of story. So it's really cool to see. As I said, I talked about this in a reading vlog video last year, and I talked about this in a dedicated video. So I really hope to finish books 3, 4, and 5 this year for Tairen Soul, because these were just amazing. The writing, very luxurious. It's kind of that old classic fantasy romance type of writing, and it's so good. This one, I have to give this one a huge shout out. This is an indie work by Jade Kim Monsen. Though it is a fictional story, it very much has a lot of real life inspiration from her own experiences becoming a mom. And Jade, like me, is a biracial woman. She is half Korean, and so she has a lot of that Korean culture and some of those kind of social things that happen in here. But what I loved about this book is it really shines a light on kind of the nerves that you develop becoming a new mom, especially. And for me, like the neuroticism that happens when you become a mother, and a lot of the depressive episodes and just some of the worries that you have, and those low points as well as those high points. And so it was really interesting to see her perspective on that. And this book was written in a way that has there's a play in the middle of this. I think there's a recipe in here. There's poetry in here too, but it's such a beautiful little book. And it was such a very poignant book on motherhood and just becoming a parent in general. So I really recommend this one. The title is very fitting for what motherhood is. And then I have A Monsoon Rising by Thea Guanzon, which is the sequel to The Hurricane Wars. The Hurricane Wars was her debut, and it was originally like a Raylo fanfic type of thing. And so the Hurricane Wars has a lot of parallels to that kind of love dynamic. But Thea really shines in her book because she writes enemies to lovers from a place that truly begins and lingers in this enemy's kind of space. And it is the slowest burn too. Even this book, they eventually move on from that enemies part into the lovers area, but getting there is so delicious because of the pining and the tension and just the way that she writes the intimacy in the love scenes that happen is just so good. I don't think I've ever read a romance scene that well depicted. Her talent in writing those kinds of scenes is just so good. And then, of course, me being half Filipino, I love the Philippine influence, and you get more of those cultural Easter eggs and stuff in this book. And you get more dragons too, which I always love in my fantasy. So very much an adult fantasy novel, very high fantasy, and just delicious tension and pining in here. So definitely pick this up. It's so worth it. But the one negative I will say is it ends on a horrible cliffhanger. I hate cliffhangers, but this has one, which is why I need the third book. But I will be here for it. And then finally, I have The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And if you've never read a book on a Kindle, if you're going to read something like Stormlight Archive, I recommend reading on a Kindle because it's it's an easier experience on the wrists. This is a chunky book without it being on a Kindle, and I'm so grateful that I had this to read it on. So The Way of Kings is book 1 in the Stormlight Archive, which is a series in the Cosmere that I have been wanting to read forever and ever and ever. I've only read the Mistborn trilogy, Era 1, and some other ones. I've read Elantris, I've read some of his YA sci-fi books. This one I buddy read with my husband after we finished Red Rising, so it was one of the last books that I read of 2024. This is an honorable mention for one of the best books that I read last year as well. Has very in-depth world building and twists and lots of character POVs and just very rich conflicts and stuff. And the thing I like about Brandon Sanderson too is he has a lot of emotional depth. Like Kaladin is a character here that really struggles with depression and purpose, and he's just been beat down. Every time he thinks that he is finally going to win at something in life, he is brought down. And he struggles with that. And he's a character that's experienced a lot of loss too. So it's kind of like a Spartacus type of story for him, where he gets turned into a slave, and then it's about him becoming this slave that helps bring up the other slaves, and him kind of elevating his position and breaking free of those chains. So I really like that about this, but there were so many character POVs that were really interesting in this. And it does have a few twists, many of them which I did not see coming. So my husband and I will be sitting down to discuss what happened in this book, which if you are a fan of Sanderson, definitely subscribe and look forward to that video because that'll be dropping here in the near future. And then I hope to start Words of Radiance soon. That is definitely something that I will be getting into and finishing up this year is Stormlight Archive before kind of traveling elsewhere in the Cosmere. I hope you enjoyed that little preview of my favorite reads of 2024. Like I said, my absolute favorite was probably Red Rising. If you have read any of these, definitely let me know what books you enjoyed, or if you didn't read any of these on these lists, tell me what you read last year that you really, really loved, and maybe I should pick up and give a read this year. So if you made it to the end of this video, drop me like a party happy face like emoji, like a little party emoji, to let me know that you made it this far. Again, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.